Because you just literally take your piece of paper.
No laptop, no smartphones.
Nothing. People, all of us, will pay money to go see a Hayao Miyazaki movie. But how many people pay money to come see a PowerPoint presentation? The hero of this story, it's not you. The hero isn't really even the product or the idea you want to sell. The hero is your audience. So in 2 hours, you can create a story that is very compelling. And part of the reason I called it the pop-up pitch, and that is where we move to the second tool in the pop-up pitch, which is the one called the 10-page pitch template.
Okay.
And this is, I did not make this up. I stole the 10-page pitch from the finest minds in the world. George Lucas, Hayao Miyazaki,
wow.
James Campbell.
So it's from Hollywood.
It's from Hollywood.
Okay.
Look, people, all of us, will pay money to go see a Hayao Miyazaki movie. We will take a lot of money to go see a Steven Spielberg movie. But how many people pay money to come see a PowerPoint presentation?
Not so many.
As the creator of the PowerPoint, as the creator of the pitch, why not just follow in the footsteps of Miyazaki or Spielberg? We know scientifically how to tell a story. The story structure has existed across every culture, across every religion, across every region for thousands of years. And people now have kind of decoded it. And there's this world called, the hero's journey.
Yes.
And so what I've done is I've said, you took your pictures, you have an idea. Now you're going to tell a story. And at each step of the way, you're going to start out by saying, just establishing a little bit of trust. I'm here to talk to you about my phone. Okay, fair enough. And then I say, phones are getting better, but they're also getting a little bit too complicated or what have you. So I establish a little bit of trust and I establish some common ground. And then I introduce a problem.
I see. So it's like the beginning of the movie.
The beginning of the movie, setting the scene. And in order for a movie to be interesting, there has to be a problem.
Yes.
If everything is beautiful, there's no movie. So I'd say, but there's a problem coming. But at the end of that problem, there's hope. Yay! But then I really pull you down and I say, but guess what? We will never achieve that hope because today we can't do it. And this is where I really drop things down to the bottom. This is just terrible. But I say, but at this point of awfulness where we are never going to be able to solve this problem, I have an idea. And this is where we finally put in our new product, our new solution for you. And I say, it doesn't have to be awful. It could be a little better. We know how to do it. Oh, do we feel good? Let's build a little bit of courage. How? Because I know how to do this. We commit to each other. We get an early reward. And by the time we're done, we have achieved an objective far beyond anything that we initially set out. So these are the 10 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And for each one of those, I created a template. You just fill it in based on your drawings, and you have created a great story. Does that follow?
And you make a happy ending. So was it important to create that drop before you go up?
Okay, it's a really, really good question. There are a lot of people who believe that everything needs to be very positive. That's true, but all the time very, very positive is also very boring. Which is why movies and novels are never all about things always being positive. There always has to be there has to be a villain, there has to be a challenge, and it is succeeding to beat that challenge that is exactly what makes the movie or the story interesting. If everything is positive, 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 eventually our audience is bored or doesn't believe us anymore. So we need to insert the negative in order to have a problem to solve. The hero of this story, it's not you. The hero isn't really even the product or the idea you want to sell. The hero is your audience. And you're sharing it with them in such a way that they see how your idea can help them achieve what they want. Does that?
Yeah, so you need to make them imagine they're kind of a movie star, a hero or heroine of a long movie story.
Exactly.
So instead of me becoming the person, we need to convince our audience that they are the stars.
Exactly. And it's not a long story. It's taken me far longer to explain it than it is to deliver it Because in the end, you will tell this story as Pamela did in about 4 to 5 minutes.
4 to 5 minutes?
Yep,
That's
4 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm Pamela. Here's what I'd like to share with you. We both agree that business is very complicated, but we also know that the future is coming and it's going to be a little bit difficult. But we also know that after this little economic bump that we have right now, things are going to look really good and your company's going to succeed. But guess what? It will not achieve that if you keep doing things the way that we are doing them now. So I'm following it.
I see.
If we just keep doing what we're doing now, we'll never make it. So I have a change. What would happen if you brought in a COO into your business earlier rather than later? That would enable you to be more efficient in your operations early, save more money in your early days so that you have more money to develop new products. And then the more quickly you can get your product to the market, the more likely you're able to be successful quickly. And the only thing you need in order to do that is you need a COO, someone to run the operations. Guess what? I know how to do that.
Wow, I'm already convinced. And you created a template so people can just fill in the templates. I'll show it in the screen for our viewers. And it's so simple as this.
Yeah.
So title, common ground, problem.
Exactly. And I did set it up, Ryan, because I know business people, we work in PowerPoint or Google Slides, so I created 2 versions of it. And it's literally a PowerPoint template that you just fill in the blanks. Now, you have to do your visual decoder first so that you know what you want to say.
So why is it important to do the visual decoder first instead of going to the 10-page template first?
It's a really, really, really good question. And from my mind, if you try to dive into telling the story, you don't yet know where you want the story to go. You have to do this in order to tell like a simple version of the story to yourself first. Who am I talking about? Who is going to be the hero? What really is the product? And if you do this quickly, then writing the story becomes very, very, very easy. But if you just try to start out by saying, here's the story, the first question is, well, who am I even talking to? Oh, I'm talking to Beth. Right. Okay. So it helps you prepare your mind.
A cheat sheet, and you can always look at your decoder and.
Totally. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the output, should this be a presentation like a PowerPoint or just simple text or Google Slides? What format do you recommend?
I think there are really 3 possible templates, and you nailed all of them. The most obvious is a PowerPoint, a 10-page PowerPoint that might contain on each page a headline, 1 simple drawing or 1 visual, and then a little bit of text, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, that no more than that. And you do that over 10 pages. That would be PowerPoint template. That's number 1. The second one would be where you just have the written slides. And you might be able to turn that into 10 very short paragraphs, which in the case of the Bangkok story we might talk about is exactly how I did that. And the third one is you encode the 10 in your mind. You have your visual decoder kind of in your pocket, and you sit down opposite someone and say, let me tell you the story. And because you've practiced it, I just replay it, kind of like I just did with you now regarding Pamela.
No slides, no laptop, no smartphone.
And it sounds hard, but you will have practiced. You will have created your visual decoder. You'll have written your story. And if you do that once, you'll be ready to tell it. You want to practice a couple of times, but you have the story in your mind. And if you think about pure impact, that's amazing. The other point I would add, and I know I share a lot, Ryan, but I really love this topic, is that typically when a business person gives you time for a presentation, by the time you've arranged to have a meeting, they typically give you maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, maybe an hour. The expectation for most of us is, I've got 45 minutes. Wow, I'll create 75 pages of PowerPoint. I'll take 40 minutes to present and leave 5 minutes for questions. This way, you give your entire kind of visual executive summary in 5 or 6 minutes, and all of the rest of the time is available for actual conversation.
And discussion.
Yeah.
That's more live and that's more engaging.
And then exactly, and it turns the conversation to be more about you rather than about me. And in this interview today, I know I'm taking a lot about me and these ideas, but in the field, when we go and practice, normally I would just have told you the story and then let it be the way to initiate the conversation back from you.
Interesting. So now we have the visual decoder and the 10-page presentation. So it's now time to do the presentation. Any advice for people?
Why would we need advice? Lead me a little bit on that, because Because people are, as we pointed out at the beginning, we're all a little bit afraid of stepping out of that comfort zone. We're a little bit afraid. I have been giving public presentations for 25 years now.
Wow.
And I've probably given 5,000 presentations.
Wow. Do you get nervous? You're like
Every single time I get terrified. That is a very uncomfortable position to be put in. And you can imagine you're doing live TV or you're doing a live event in front of 10,000 people. Wow. Everybody gets afraid. I don't know who are the famous stand-up comedians in Japan. I don't know. I wish I did. But you can imagine, even someone who's been up there 1,000 times, you're always anxious because you don't want to screw it up this time. You want to make sure you remember. You want to make sure you don't look foolish. So the key to remember is anybody who tells you they're not afraid of giving a speech is either a little crazy or lying. Or they're hiding something. Everybody's afraid. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So the simple answer is create your visual story, encode in your visual mind, where you will remember it, what it is you really, really want to share. Create your 10-page story. And to be fair, when you play it back, if you forget a step, it's okay because nobody else knows but you. And then the real advice is practice it twice. Twice is all you need. If you practice 50 times, you start to become the robot. Practice it twice, once by yourself, in the shower or walking around the block. Just say it aloud. And when you're practicing, don't just do it in your mind. One of the things that I can tell you from experience is often very frightening for someone who's giving a speech is, especially when you're in public and you have a microphone, when you hear your own voice coming back at you, it can be very jarring. So in your first round practice, do it by yourself and do it aloud. You have to hear yourself say the words. And don't just say, on slide 3, I'll say something about the story. Actually say the words. Say, the story is, say the words. And then the second time, find someone else who you trust, a friend or a colleague or someone you don't mind kind of embarrassing yourself, and share it with them. 2 times is usually about enough. And then, of course, the more times you practice, you'll get better. But we can't overstate how important it is to practice it. I don't know what the Japanese equivalent would be, but there's this notion of I'll just wing it. I'll make it up as I go. Death sentence. Don't do it. But 2 or 3 times is usually enough. And recognize that the fear is real. You don't have to be afraid of the fear. And it's very important just before you go up on stage. You feel the fear in your chest. You feel the butterflies. Everybody does. You feel a little anxiety. Instead of running from that, embrace it and say, that fear is there to protect me. That is my body saying, I'm about to do something that's a high threat. It's not really a high threat because very few people ever died from giving a speech, right. But it feels like it.
Yes.
And don't hide that. Don't say, well, I'm not afraid. Say, I recognize it, and then take that energy that's in you and channel it into the power you have to actually project yourself and maybe be a little bit bigger than you would normally be.
So one more question before we go into detail. So we now have ChatGPT, and maybe in the future or maybe in the near future, we just can put in some bullet points and they will create a presentation for us. Do you think we still need the skills for creating a presentation?
Absolutely. Ryan, it's an incredible question, especially these days with ChatGPT and AI coming out so fast. And my personal belief is I think we need to figure out a way to try to regulate it because we do not really fully know what we're playing with. I mean, and this is really, really powerful.
Yes.
However, I have worked a little bit with ChatGPT. I've written some presentations using ChatGPT. And to answer your original question, I do not think that the robots are going to take over because I've drawn another little picture here. Let me try another color. I tried to just say that, this is any one of us that's a person, and here's the robot. The robot looks like it knows a lot. Let's call that AI.
Okay.
And we'll just call this, me or you or whomever. Okay. The robot, because it has access to the entire internet, looks like it knows something. But in fact, the robot doesn't really know anything. The robot is just a mechanism that is very, very good at collecting a lot of work that other people have done and then presenting it back to us. Now, where the trick is that the robot has so much access to so much information. It also knows which messages have been most successful. And the robot is kind of amoral. It doesn't know the power of the message, so it just picks the one that's the most important, which is what's a little frightening.
Right.
But here's the good news. The ideas are actually coming from here. So I think the best way to treat the robot is as a kind of a co-pilot. The co-pilot doesn't really know where the airplane is going. The co-pilot doesn't really care about getting there.
That's right.
The co-pilot is able to provide additional resources, additional guidance, perhaps some more research. So I really think the robot will not create the presentation for us, or if it does, it will be a terrible presentation. And we will eventually be able to detect.
Yes.
But if we are smart enough to be able to use it as our co-pilot, I think crafting our presentation can become actually a little better.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you need to be a leader and also a pilot at the same time.
I like that. Yes, you need to be the leader and you need to be the pilot. Yes.
And also we need to read your book.
And you need to read the pop-up pitch. Yes.
Okay, so why do you think we tend to think that when we want to give a presentation, we need to polish it, use the perfect picture? But I think this still works, but why do you think we tend to think that way?
I think, Ryan, it comes back to where we started. A little bit of fear. I'm very afraid of being perceived by my audience as not perfect. And it's tricky because I really don't know Japanese business style, but my impression from the movies is that there's a real emphasis on trying to be perfect.
Yes.
Great, because the outcome of that is that, Japanese products are extraordinarily good. They've been very successful worldwide because of the quality, because of the perfection. But it might also, I don't know this, but I'm hypothesizing, it might also inhibit innovation. Because innovation is messy. Trying something new for the first time, our sushi burrito, for example, it might be ugly, but if we didn't try it, we'd never know. So I really think that we put so much time into the presentation out of a fear of being perceived as imperfect. So perhaps, I'm guessing, perhaps one of the biggest challenges for our Japanese audience is to find the courage to say, I'm willing to try and maybe be wrong. And I would like to think that if you use the tools that are in here, it can help you. Remember, though, that we have this third group, the audience. And you always, as any presenter, no matter what idea, you have to be very thoughtful of your audience. And if your audience is a group of incredibly senior business executives, or you asked me to maybe talk about a story that took place in Bangkok, I know that the audience is expecting a lot of respect and respecting me to give them something that I didn't just make up on the way into the meeting. So there are situations where I do want to be perfect, but I think we over-rotate on thinking that every time, because often the real meetings are the ones that take place in the back room,
Right.
where things don't have to be
Right.
perfect. They have to be interesting, and that's what we're after.
I think it's the perfect timing to publish your book in Japanese because if it were 20 years ago, maybe the Japanese business person tend to think that these pictures should be perfect. It should be like a Hayao Miyazaki anime. But now things are changing and there's a lot of startups, especially our publication focusing startups. So
Perfect,
I know
yeah.
for sure that people are shipping items before just arguing or just doing a bunch of meetings. I think it's the perfect timing. The Japanese customs are changing rapidly right now.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure,
that? Is innovation starting to come back a little bit more then?
It's coming
in
back,
that way?
yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. So people, like, instead of going to big companies, they're trying to start their own companies or pivoting from another company to another. So I think it's a good timing. And especially the government is pushing people to go to startups right now.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
I mentioned that I'm here with my fiance for a month to do this artist residency program. So the place where we're staying is over in Taitoku. And it's a neighborhood of, I know it's a very old neighborhood, but what I find fascinating is it's a neighborhood of small manufacturers.
Yes.
Like very cottage industry craftspeople, whether it's leather or woodworking or silver. You know what I'm telling you this. And I find it's really interesting because the energy of these small business people, to me, is very, very powerful. Because we all know Mitsubishi and Hitachi, and they're great, and Toyota, fantastic. But what about the little guy? What about where innovation comes from the little person too? And to hear that is opening up is sounds fantastic.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Because I think they're thinking not as doing a job, but maybe crafting something. Or it's kind of form of art rather than a simple occupation. So
Yeah,
I 100% agree with you.
Fantastic.
Okay, so my final question. So this is the Japanese version of your book.
Yeah.
It says the simplest skills for presentation that will catch your heart.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, so it's a beautiful cover. So any final comments for our viewers who are interested in presentation or your book?
Well, Ryan, my final comment is thank you so much for bringing me in. I know so little about Japanese business, but I love what I've seen of Japan. I love the culture. I love coming here and doing my art. And I would just encourage people, if you are afraid of innovating or if you're afraid of presenting, this is actually a really good approach to building some confidence and some courage that is actually based on science.
Okay. Thank you, Dan-san. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Ryan, my pleasure. Thank you.
So my favorite smoke in those days was a fellow named Mainu.
著者の思いや日本語にまだ翻訳されていない生のグローバル情報をお届けします。
Japanese work culture in the companies where people are stuck.
I believe the only logical approach.
Any advice for Japanese investors?
So I cannot say too many times, stay with what you know, and that's how you will be successful. Everybody knows something about something. Stay with it. Now, some people will say, oh, Jim, that's boring. Ryan, be boring. If you want to be a successful investor, be boring.